Right, we'll see if I can actually make out the words here. It's tiny font, but this is Education by E.B. White taken from One Man's Meat. So education. I have an increasing admiration for the teacher in the country school where we have a third grade scholar in attendance. She not only undertakes to instruct her charges in all the subjects of the first three grades, but she manages to function quietly and effectively as a guardian of their health, their clothes, their habits, their mothers, and their snowball engagements. She's been doing this sort of Ogian task for 20 years and is both kind and wise. She cooks for the children on the stove that heats the room, and she can cool their passions or warm their soup with equal competence. She conceives their costume, cleans up their messes, and shares their confidences. My boy already regards his teacher as his great friend, and I think tells her a great deal more than he tells us. The shift from city school to country school was something we worried about quietly all last summer. I have always rather favored public school over private school, if only because in public school you meet a greater variety of children. The bias of mine, I suspect, is partially an attempt to justify my own past. I never knew anything but public schools, and partly an involuntary defense against getting kicked in the shins by a young ceramicist on his way to the kiln. My wife was unacquainted with public schools, never having been exposed, in her early life, to anything more public than the washroom of Miss Windsor's. Regardless of our backgrounds, we both knew that the change in schools was something that concerned not us, but the scholar himself. We hoped it would work out all right. In New York, our son went to a medium priced private institution with semi progressive ideas of education and modern plumbing. He learned fast, kept well, and we were satisfied. It was an eclectic, colorful, regimented existence, with moments of pleasurable pause and giddy incident. The day the Christmas angel fainted and had to be carried out by one of the wise men was educational in the highest sense of the term. Our scholar gave imitations of it around the house for weeks thereafterwards. I doubt if it ever goes completely out of his mind. His days were rich in formal experience. Wearing overalls and an old sweater, the accepted uniform of the private seminary, he sallied forth at morn accompanied by a nurse or a parent and walked, or was pulled, 2 blocks to a corner where the school bus made a flag stop. This flashy vehicle was as punctual as death. Seeing us waiting at the cold curb, it would sweep to a halt, open its mouth, suck the boy in, and spring away with an angry growl. It was a good idea, like a train picking up a bag of mail. It was a good deal like a train picking up a bag of mail. At school, the scholar was worked on for 6 or 7 hours by half a dozen teachers and a nurse, and was revived on orange juice in mid-morning. In a circular court he played games supervised by an athletic instructor, and in a cafeteria he ate lunch worked out by a dietitian. He soon learned to read with gratifying facility and discernment and to make Indian weapons of semi-deadly nature. Whenever one of his classmates fell low of a fever, the news was put out on the wires and there was breathless phone calls to physicians discussing periods of incubation and allied magic. In all in the country, all one can say is that the situation is different and somewhat more casual. Dressed up in corduroys, sweatshirt, and short rubber boots, and carrying a tin dinner pail, our scholar departs at the crack of dawn for the village school, 2.5 miles down the road next to the cemetery. When the road is open and the car will start, he makes the journey by motor, courtesy of his old man. When the snow is deep or the motor is dead or both, he makes it on hoof. In the afternoon he walks or hitches all or part of the way home. In fair weather gets transport in foul. The schoolhouse is a 2-story frame building, bungalow type, shingle stained in a burnt brown and weather resistant stain. It has a chemical toilet in the basement and 2 teachers above the stairs. One takes the first grades the other takes the fourth, fifth, and sixth. They have little or no time for individual instruction, and no time at all for the esoteric. They teach what they know themselves just as fast and as hard as they can manage. The pupils sit still at their desks in class and do their milling around outdoors during recess. There is no supervised play. They play cops and robbers, only they call it jail, and throw things at one another, snowballs in winter, rose hips in fall. It seems to satisfy them. They also construct darts, pinwheels, and pickup sticks, jackstraws, and the school itself does a brisk trade in penny candy, which is for sale right in the classroom, and which contains surprises. The most highly prized surprise is a fake cigarette made of cardboard, fiendishly lifelike. The memory of how apprehensive we were at the beginning is still strong. The boy was nervous about the change, too. The tension on the first fair morning in September, when we drove him to school, almost blew the windows out of the sedan. And when we picked him up on the road, wandering along with his little blue lunch pail, and got his laconic report, "All right," in answer to our inquiry about how the day had gone, our relief was vast. Now, after almost a year of it, the only difference we can discover in the two school experiences is that in the country he sleeps better at night, and that probably is more the air than the education. When grilled on the subject of school and country versus school and city, he replied that the chief difference is that the day seems to go much quicker in the country. Just like lightning, he reported. It is just a year ago as I write this that I made my spring visit to Peter Henderson in Cortlandt Street, home of Corvallis Major and the early peas. I bought $19 worth of seeds, flour, and vegetable. It took the clerk almost an hour opening and shutting the white drawer to fish them out. Together we studied the list, checked it for errors. Carrying the bundle home in the subway, I was struck with how heavy the seeds were. They weighed almost as much as a time bomb. A Negro came into the seed store while I was there. He was in clericals and seemed to be quite a fellow. "Give me a penny to delod," he cried, addressing no one in particular. "Give me a penny to delord, and makes it all these wonderful seeds to germinate." He was a slick one and got a pretty good haul. I put all my money, however, into direct cultivations, the seeds themselves. They did well enough, and are still eating them out of the jars, and we are still eating them out of the jars. Now we're in New York again, for a visit, not just to consult Peter Henderson, but to get back into the good graces of the dentist and to catch up with the theater. I suppose there is no reason for not going to the dentist in the country, but teeth are like sunken seeds. You feel much better about them if they've gone over by someone who possesses what the pilot book calls local knowledge, someone who has been over them before. Also, dentistry is more impressive in towns. What the rural man calls cleaning the teeth is called prophylaxis in New York. Quite apart from teeth and dramaturgy and seed buying, it is necessary to come up to town after a long spell in the country for a period of privacy and rest. I don't get enough sleep in the country, as days are too short for my enterprise, and a result that I rise early, go to bed late, and in general prolong the waking hours. And of course, there's no privacy in rural surroundings, where a man can't even blow his nose without exciting the community. I thought at first I was going to mind this limelight terribly, this being stared at, the men working on the road, looking up, watching, the men in front of the store in dooryards, the old men coming in through the dusk with arms full of stovewood, stopping in their tracks to watch the car go by, women tending the hens, everywhere the fixed eye. I discovered, however, that the situation was instantly relieved as soon as I acquired the knack of staring back. You've got to stare back. Besides, after you've lived in the country a while, you learn that keeping track of the comings and goings of one's friends and neighbors is a very sensible thing indeed, and that it cannot be set down to idle curiosity. Not a car or team passes my team passes my door now, but I look up, check its speed and direction, identify the driver if possible, and guess the errand. This isn't mere gossip hunting. It's a valuable personal intelligence service. I used to waste hours of my time hunting up people who, if I'd used my eyes and ears, I should have known were someplace else. It's like war. You've got to have a map with pins, the location of the mail truck, the progress of the snowplow, the whereabouts of the expressman and the fish peddler. Such information becomes vastly important. I find that keeping abreast of my neighbor's affairs has increased, not diminished, my human sympathies, if any. And when I get up in the morning and spy one man heading south on foot with a dog and a shotgun, and another heading north with a sick child in a blue coupe, the pattern of the day becomes clear, and I can conduct my affairs more wisely and usefully than if I lacked that knowledge. Of course, one's horizons tend to close in. In New York, I rise and scan Europe in the Times. In country, I get up and look at the thermometer, a thoroughly self-contained point of view. If it could affect everyone everywhere, I am sure it would be the most salutary thing that could have happened in the world to the world. My isolation is short-lived, however. An hour later, I stop by the store to buy a package of soap chips, and I hear the radio telling me the temperature in Providence, Rhode Island. Immediately, the shell of my comfortable little world is rudely shortened, and I shudder in sympathy in response to Rhode Island's raw mercurial destiny. There was a time when only God could make a tree, but now John D. Rockefeller Jr. can do it too. Our visit to New York happens to coincide with the arrival of the great elms along Fifth Avenue, those lovely 70-foot trees which are springing full grown from the pavement in front of Radio City. I attended the first of the 8 miracles and felt like a character in the Old Testament. Nelson Rockefeller was there wearing rubbers, although it was a dry night, and carrying a briefcase. The last time I had seen him was at the groundbreaking, when Radio City was still a blueprint. He looked unchanged by the years. I hastily wondered if I did too, but was less camera-shy and more poised now that the buildings were there, throwing their majestic weight in support of the whole visionary idea. The elm itself, at first horizontal on the truck, lay as though dead, but was soon managed, with the help of a winch, to sit bolt upright and look around. Mr. Rockefeller leapt easily to the bowl of earth, and the photographers lay down on their backs on the sidewalk for the angle shot which was to distinguish their art. It was the first time I had ever seen a man lie down on Fifth Avenue, although I once saw a man down in a fit, although I once saw a fellow down in a fit. A woman passing, seeing that someone was up to the prank of setting out a tree in the shopping district, remarked that she thought it was a mighty silly thing, a tree. What do they want a tree for? She said. It will just be in the way. I think Elmbirth is the prettiest fairy tale in the city's wonder book, for the big trees are delivered at night, when the earth hangs down away from the light and fowls are stirring in the rooms. For the big trees are delivered at night, when the earth hangs down away from the light and fowls are stirring on their roosts. In all the long swing of time there has never been a fortnight such as this. These midnights when late strolling citizens come suddenly on a giant elm, arriving furtively in the marketplace and sliding into position for those early risers to discover on their way to work. That is An Education by E.B. White, and that was first published in March of 1939. More videos later.